My name is Alina Carter. I'm 29 years old, and 3 weeks before my wedding, I thought I was living every girl's dream. I had the perfect fiancé, kind, charming, successful. His name was Noah. We'd been together for 3 years, and last Christmas, he proposed under the twinkle lights in front of both our families. I cried. He cried. It felt like a beginning. And standing next to me through it all was my best friend of 12 years, Camille, loyal, stylish, a little reckless. In the best way. She helped me plan every detail of the wedding, from the dress fittings to the seating charts. We laughed over wine, cried over florals, and dreamed together about the future. If you had asked me then who I trusted most in the world, I would have said Noah and Camille. And I would have been dead wrong. I grew up in a house where love often came dressed as criticism, ironed, manicured, and biting. My mother, Elaine Carter, was known in our town for her picture-perfect garden parties and magazine-featured kitchen, not for her warmth. Composure is currency, Alina, she would say. No one respects a woman who makes a scene. I learned young that silence was survival. That if you smiled, kept your posture perfect, and never let the cracks show, you could keep the peace. So, I did. I became the girl who smoothed over arguments at dinner, who apologized first, even when I wasn't wrong. I was the glue no one acknowledged, but everyone relied on. When I brought Noah home for the first time, my mother's approval was instant. His family ran a regional law firm. His suits were always pressed. He didn't interrupt or challenge her. He's a Carter kind of man, she'd said approvingly. I remember feeling relieved and slightly off at the same time. Like I was watching a performance, and they were both nailing their roles. My father, more passive, followed her lead. My older brother, Harrison, barely looked up from his phone. He was the golden child, the Ivy League graduate, the hedge fund baby, the pride of every Christmas letter. I was the creative one, which was code for the one we don't understand. I'd built a solid career in marketing and design, but it never quite impressed them. Noah, though? He fit right in. They talked stocks and sports and praised his every opinion like it was gospel. And then there was Camille. Camille and I met in our sophomore year of college. She had a sharp wit and zero tolerance for pretense. She'd grown up in a chaotic home. And I think we bonded over our silent agreement to be each other's safety net. She became my chosen family, the one person who saw every version of me and never flinched. Camille knew the ache behind my mother's compliments and the tension that tightened my shoulders before every family dinner. She understood why I didn't like to cry in front of people and why I hesitated before celebrating my own wins. She moved to the city after graduation, and we were inseparable. Late-night talks, spontaneous road trips, emotional rescues. She even helped Noah plan the proposal. Or so I thought. In the months leading up to the wedding, I found myself caught between two worlds, my mother's demand for the perfect celebration and Camille's promise of authenticity and fun. I bent to both. I let my mother veto the dress I loved because she said it looked cheap on camera. I changed the floral arrangements 3 times because she said hydrangeas were suburban. Meanwhile, Camille and I stayed up late scrolling Pinterest boards and laughing about how weddings are just big performances for other people. Noah stayed out of most decisions. Whatever makes you happy, he'd say with a smile. And I would nod, grateful. But sometimes, I wondered. He and Camille got along well, too well, if I'm honest, in hindsight. They both shared that dry, intellectual humor I sometimes felt excluded from. But I brushed it off. After all, Camille was family to me. And Noah was going to be my husband. Why would I doubt the two people I trusted most? I told myself I was lucky that I had what other women envied. A doting fiancé. A best friend turned maid of honor. A family that approved. I ignored the creeping hollowness I sometimes felt when my decisions were dismissed, when my voice was softened to keep harmony. Looking back, the signs were there, in missed glances, subtle silences, and the way Camille stopped texting back as quickly as she used to. But I was too busy playing my part. Too busy making sure everyone else was comfortable, and that's why, when the betrayal finally came, I didn't scream. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't fall apart, because I'd been conditioned to endure in silence. But this time, I was done surviving. This time, I was going to reclaim my story, on my terms. It happened on a Thursday night, one of those quiet, nothing special evenings where life feels stable in its routine. Noah had just come back from drinks with some colleagues. He smelled faintly of whiskey and expensive cologne, and as he slipped into bed beside me, he kissed my forehead and said, "You're everything to me, Alina." I believed him. He drifted off to sleep quickly, breathing deep and even. His phone, carelessly left on the nightstand, buzzed once, a soft, almost apologetic vibration. Normally, I wouldn't have checked it. I never had a reason to. Trust was the foundation of everything between us, but something nudged me that night. Maybe it was the way he'd said those words. Too polished. Too rehearsed. Maybe it was the silence that had started to grow between us in the last few months, small moments that felt hollow, conversations that skimmed the surface. Or maybe I already knew, deep down, and had been waiting for proof. The screen lit up. Can't stop thinking about last night. Still wearing your hoodie, winky face, my stomach turned cold. The message was from an unsaved number, but I recognized it instantly. It was Camille's, the tone. The emoji. The familiarity. My first instinct was disbelief. Surely not. Not Camille. Not Noah. I scrolled up. Slowly. Carefully. My fingers shaking as if they knew something I didn't want to face. The thread went back months. Jokes I wasn't part of. Mentions of dinners I hadn't known happened. Photos, subtle, suggestive, never explicit, but clear enough to feel like a punch to the chest. Wish you were here. You looked so hot tonight. Only 10 more days until we can sneak away again. I wanted to throw the phone. Wake him up. Scream until he couldn't deny it. But instead, I stood up, slowly, mechanically. And walked to the kitchen. I remember the sound of the kettle boiling. The hum of the refrigerator. The absolute absurdity of making tea after discovering that your fiancé is in love with your best friend. I didn't cry right away. I stared at the wall, the steam from my cup curling upward like a ghost. When the tears came, they were silent. Just a steady stream down my cheeks as I sat on the cold tile floor, my robe tucked around me, trying to stay small and invisible, as if I could disappear from this moment altogether. I felt stupid, but more than that, I felt erased. They hadn't just betrayed me. They'd rewritten my memories, the nights Camille had cancelled plans because she was exhausted. The times Noah said he had late meetings, the way they avoided being in the same room too long, a detail I had chalked up to politeness. All of it was a lie, and I had smiled through it. Planned a wedding with them. Shared my soul with them. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I had read every message. I had memorized the dates. The timelines. I knew when it started. I knew when it intensified. I even knew that the night Noah proposed, Camille had sent him a photo wearing lingerie I'd bought her as a birthday gift. It was like watching my life dissolve in reverse, one memory at a time, but I didn't confront him. Not then. When he woke up and kissed me good morning, I kissed him back. When he asked if I wanted to pick cake samples that weekend, I nodded. When Camille texted about the bridesmaid dress alterations, I replied with a smiley face, because something in me had shifted. I had spent my entire life making other people comfortable. Being the reasonable one. The quiet one. The forgivable one. But that night, sitting on the floor of my kitchen, I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fall apart in front of them. They wanted me invisible. Fine, let them believe I was still asleep, let them underestimate me, for the last time, because I was done crying. I was done shrinking, and if they thought I was going to let them walk down the aisle together with my silence as their witness. They had no idea who I was about to become. The hardest part wasn't leaving Daniel. It was letting go of the life I had built in my head. The mornings with matching coffee mugs, the children's names I'd scribbled in the margins of magazines, the annual Christmas cards with staged smiles and golden retrievers. All of it. Gone, and no one knew, not yet. The first thing I did was open a private account in my name. I sat at the bank, numb and polite, nodding as the teller walked me through the paperwork. I transferred exactly half of the joint savings into it, a decision I justified with quiet logic. We weren't married yet. I had contributed equally. And besides, I would need it for what was coming. Next was the lease. Our apartment was in both our names, but I'd been the one who found it. Decorated it. Loved it. Still, I called the landlord and gave notice. I told Daniel that my office wanted me to travel for a 2-week client project. He didn't question it. In fact, he barely looked up from his phone. "That's great, babe," he muttered. "Send me the new schedule?" I almost laughed. He had no idea I was packing my life into boxes while he was texting Camille from the bathroom. I didn't cry when I folded the sweatshirt he used to wear. I didn't cry when I wrapped the picture frames from our Paris trip. The tears only came when I found the journal my grandmother had given me in college, with a note in her delicate handwriting that read, "For when you need to write the truth." I moved into Mia's guest room without fanfare. She was away for the month, working on a dance residency, and had offered her place casually weeks before, back when I had mentioned needing space to think. I told her it was about work. She didn't press. The guest room had cream walls, soft lighting, and a small window that let in morning sun. It became my sanctuary for 12 days. I spoke to no one. I woke up. I made tea. I showered. I ate toast. I opened my journal and wrote exactly what I was feeling. Not just about Daniel. About everything, about Camille's betrayal. About the years I spent making myself likable. About the way my mother taught me to smooth things over, not speak up. About how I always said, "It's okay," even when it wasn't. About how I had kept shrinking to fit in spaces never meant for me. On day 4, I wrote, I am done being the girl who doesn't take up space. I didn't text Daniel once. He sent messages, mundane ones at first. Want to taste cake Saturday? Photographer sent sample shots. Then more confused. Everything okay? You're being distant. Let's talk. I ignored them all, and Camille, she stayed quiet. She had no idea I knew. The silence was heavy, but necessary. Like winter. On day 7, I met with a lawyer. A woman recommended by a colleague. Discreet, sharp, expensive. I'm not married yet, I told her. But we live together. Our lives are entangled. And I need to untangle them. She didn't blink. Just opened a legal pad and said, let's start. I spent the next hour unspooling the facts. No, there was no prenup. The wedding hadn't happened yet. Yes, we had joint assets. Yes, I had evidence of infidelity. No, I didn't want to sue anyone. I just wanted distance. Clarity. Autonomy. I want to make sure when I leave, I said, I don't leave in pieces. When I walked out of her office, I felt 10 pounds lighter, not free. Not yet, but clean. That night, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Noticing the dark circles, the paleness. The unfamiliar woman staring back at me. Then I picked up scissors, and I cut my hair, not impulsively. Not in grief. In declaration. The long, romantic waves were part of that version of me who planned engagement shoots and wore blush lipstick and second-guessed her gut. I needed to see myself differently. So I did. Day 10 was the first time I left the apartment. For no reason. I walked through the city in a hoodie and sunglasses. Anonymous. Observing people laughing at cafes, kissing at street corners. I felt like a ghost, but I wasn't dead. I was cocooning. A part of me was grieving, yes. But not for Daniel, for Alina, the version of me who once believed love meant sacrifice. That goodness was in enduring. That worth was in being chosen. I sat on a park bench and watched a little girl drawing with chalk on the sidewalk. Her lines were messy. Unapologetic. She was lost in the act of creating, not worried about being neat. I envied her. That night, I began sketching again. I hadn't drawn in over a year. I opened a fresh page in my journal and let the lines take shape, not of faces or wedding dresses, but of emotions. Angles. Shadows. Truths I couldn't speak yet, and somehow, that felt more honest than anything I'd done in years. The next morning, I emailed my boss and asked to go part-time for a while. No reason given. Just, I need space. He replied, take care of yourself. Let me know what you need. That kindness broke me more than the betrayal had, because it reminded me that not everyone expects you to disappear just because you say no. By day 12, I stopped counting days, and by then, I had made my decision. I wouldn't cancel the wedding. I would show up, let them dress up in their lies, let them smile through rehearsals and cake tastings and fittings, let them think I was still asleep, because when the curtain lifted, I wanted them to feel what I had felt: shock, silence, and then the sting of the truth. It started with the florist. Hi, this is Alina, I said, my voice steady. I'd like to make a few edits to the ceremony arrangement. The woman was cheerful. Of course, sweetie. Still going with the soft blush palette? Yes, I said. But remove the peonies. Replace them with white calla lilies. And I want all the roses deep red. Crimson. She didn't ask why. She just said, dramatic. Bold. I love it. That was the point. Next was the photographer. I told him I wanted the ceremony covered in full but asked him not to post anything publicly, not yet. We're keeping it intimate, I said. I'll share the selects after. He agreed. Everyone always agreed with the bride, even the planner, Danielle, a woman who had been coordinating weddings for 10 years, didn't question my tone when I told her I wanted to make a few adjustments to the day of timeline. No bouquet toss. I'll be making a speech before the vows. A pause. Of course, she said. You're sure you don't want to rehearse it? I'd rather keep it natural, I replied. What I didn't say: rehearsals are for people pretending. I was done pretending. I didn't cancel the cake tasting. I didn't pull out of the fittings. I smiled through every appointment and nodded as Daniel complimented my dress, oblivious to the storm forming behind my eyes. Chloe showed up to our final venue walkthrough wearing soft pastels and fake remorse. I'm so proud of you, she said, touching my arm. You've always been the one who kept it all together. I don't know how you do it. She didn't know that I already had screenshots of their texts. That I had read every inside joke, every hotel reservation, every lie. She didn't know that I had changed the seating chart, that her seat, once next to me, as maid of honor, was now in the third row, behind Daniel's distant cousins. She didn't know that I had changed the song I would walk down the aisle to. It used to be a soft piano ballad we both loved. Now it was a haunting orchestral piece I found while wide awake at 2 a.m., full of tension and slow building power, because this wasn't a wedding anymore. It was theater. They thought I was fragile. In denial. Blind, but I wasn't. I was aware of every step. I didn't explode. Didn't scream. Didn't cancel anything. That's what made it powerful, because quiet power is the kind people don't see coming. I contacted the officiant, a gentle, semi-retired professor who had agreed months ago to do our ceremony. I told him I'd like to speak before the vows. A personal message. He asked if Daniel would also speak. No, I said. Just me. He raised an eyebrow, but smiled kindly. I'm looking forward to it. So was I. I end the quiet hours at Mia's apartment. I wrote the speech by hand, then rewrote it, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted every word to be precise. Every sentence was a scalpel, every pause, a scalpel sharpened with memory. Daniel still sent goodnight texts. Still called me Angel. Still made plans for the honeymoon, a Maldives trip I had never confirmed. I let him keep talking, let Chloe keep smiling, let my mother keep talking about how beautiful everything would be. None of them noticed I had stopped answering questions with real answers. None of them asked how I was. That silence told me everything. On the surface, I was the bride they expected, polished, peaceful, perfect, but beneath it, I was rebuilding, not from ashes, from choice. The final thing I did was visit the venue alone, the night before the wedding. It was empty. Rows of white chairs, aisle lined with candles, the arch decorated in deep red roses now. I stood under that arch and whispered the first line of my speech into the quiet. My name is Alina, and I've always been told love means compromise. But today, I'd like to offer a different definition. The air was still. I smiled. I wasn't doing this to hurt them. I was doing it to reclaim the story. To show that you can be betrayed and still rise. To remind them that the quiet ones are the ones you should never underestimate. The next day, I'd walk down this aisle, not as Daniel's bride, but as the author of my own ending. The video took me 3 nights to edit. Not because I didn't know what I wanted to show, I knew exactly what I needed, but because I had to get the tone right. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just undeniable. I kept it clean. Timeline on one side, screenshots on the other. Hotel receipts. Messages with timestamps. A slow progression of betrayal, dressed up as casual check-ins and flirty emojis. There was even a selfie, them in a restaurant we once went to together. Her wearing the necklace I thought Daniel had bought for me. I cropped nothing. I explained nothing. I let their words do the talking. No voiceover. Just a title screen at the start. This is what love looked like behind my back. I uploaded it to a private link. Password protected. I sent the link to the AV coordinator for the rehearsal dinner, told him I'd be playing a short surprise video near the end of the night. Just a little thank you, I said. He nodded, smiling. We'll make it seamless. Good, seamless is what I was going for. The night before the wedding, I arrived at the rehearsal dinner exactly on time. Not early, not so early that I'd look eager. Not late, either. I wore a dark green silk dress, something Chloe once said made me look too serious. I took that as a compliment. The room was softly lit, candles flickering, soft jazz playing in the background. Our families gathered in clusters, laughing over hors d'oeuvres. Daniel was talking to my uncle about mortgage rates. Chloe was laughing too loudly at something my dad said. They were both dressed up, he in a fitted blazer, she in soft lavender. She caught my eye when I walked in, gave me a little wave. Nervous energy underneath. Daniel kissed my cheek and said I looked beautiful. They think they've won. They think I never found out. Let's take a picture, my mother chirped, ushering us toward the flower wall. The photographer snapped a shot. Me, Chloe, and Daniel in a perfect triangle. I looked calm, peaceful. At home, exactly what I wanted the photo to say, exactly what would make tomorrow's fallout even more shattering. Dinner was catered. 5 courses. My father gave a toast about commitment. Chloe stood beside me, arm looped in mine. Daniel held my hand beneath the table like we were 17 again. At one point, Chloe leaned in, whispering, I know you've been stressed, but it's all coming together so beautifully. I looked at her manicured nails, her flawless winged eyeliner, and smiled. You have no idea. She blinked, but said nothing. I waited until dessert. The servers brought out creme brulee. People were relaxed, full, laughing. I stood up and gently tapped my glass. I just want to thank you all, I began, steady. Planning this wedding has been overwhelming, but all of you made it easier. Especially 2 people who've been by my side this entire time. I turned to Daniel. Thank you for making me feel like the luckiest woman alive. He smiled. Warm. Still holding my hand. Then I turned to Chloe. And to you, my best friend since freshman year, thank you for being my second heartbeat. She looked like she might cry. Perfect. I wanted to give you both something tonight, I continued. So I put together a little video. The AV guy dimmed the lights. The screen lit up, and the silence that followed could have swallowed the world. It started gently, screenshots, texts. At first, people didn't understand what they were seeing. A couple of guests whispered, but then came the photo of Chloe and Daniel kissing outside a hotel. A timestamp from 3 months ago, then another, her in his sweatshirt, in the mirror, smiling like the world was hers. I didn't look at them. I watched the audience. My grandmother gasped. My cousin dropped her fork. Daniel was frozen. Mouth slightly open. Chloe's face turned sheet white. The video ended after 3 minutes. Nothing flashy. Just a black screen with white text. This was the love I was marrying into. When the lights came back on, no one spoke. For a full 5 seconds, the room held its breath. Then Daniel stood up. Alina, I held up a hand. This isn't a discussion. Just a thank you. My mother stood slowly. Alina, when did you, long enough ago to plan this calmly? Chloe reached for me, eyes glistening. Please, don't. I didn't need a scene. This was never about drama. It was about silence finally ending. I turned to the crowd. The wedding is off, in case that wasn't obvious. But the venue is paid for. The music, the food, it's all yours tomorrow. Celebrate love, or mourn deception. Either way, I'm done carrying the shame of someone else's choices. And then I walked out. I didn't cry, not even in the car, because what would tears do? I'd already said everything I needed to, without shouting, without insults. The most powerful sentence I'd ever spoken was in the way I left. That night, Daniel called 17 times, Chloe messaged once. Just one sentence, you didn't have to do that. I didn't respond. She was wrong. I did. I had to remind them, and myself, that I was never the fragile one in this story. I was the writer, and this was only the middle. The morning after the rehearsal dinner should have been chaos, but I had prepared for peace. I turned off my phone. No calls. No notifications. I made tea, sat in the sun, and watched the steam rise from the mug like it had somewhere better to be. I wasn't at the bridal suite. I wasn't crying over wilted flowers or cancelled timelines. I was free. I got dressed. Slowly, not in a gown, but in a soft ivory pantsuit. Minimal makeup. Clean hair. My mother would have called it underwhelming. I called it honest. By noon, I drove to the venue. The parking lot was full. People came anyway. Maybe curiosity brought them. Maybe guilt. Maybe the promise of a story they could later whisper about. I was there when I stepped out of the car and felt every eye turn toward me. No veil. No bouquet, but all eyes were still mine. Inside, the floral arch still stood. The officiant still waited. The chairs still faced the altar. Someone had even lit the candles. Daniel was at the front, in a tailored tux, fidgeting. Chloe stood off to the side, pale and trembling, wearing the blush pink satin dress we'd picked out together months ago. I walked in like it was my wedding. Because in a way, it still was, the wedding of who I used to be. Guests whispered. Murmurs rippled. No music played. I reached the front and turned, not to Daniel, but to the crowd. Thank you all for coming, I began, voice firm, clear. I know yesterday was unexpected. But I wanted to say something now, with no edits and no video cuts. Daniel stepped forward. Alina, can we talk? I didn't even look at him. I won't be marrying Daniel today, I continued. That much is obvious. But what you may not know is that this day, this venue, this ceremony, none of it was ever about us. It was about expectations. About what a good daughter does, what a quiet fiancé tolerates, what a perfect woman endures. I scanned the crowd. Faces I'd grown up with. Faces that had smiled at me while dismissing every instinct I'd ever had. I let a lot of things slide in the name of keeping peace, I said. But peace built on betrayal is just silence in disguise. Daniel looked like he wanted to vanish. Chloe looked like she already had. My mother taught me to be elegant. My father taught me to be patient. But neither of them taught me what to do when the people you trust betray you with a smile. I took a long pause, then I looked straight at Chloe. Some people said I didn't have to do what I did last night. That I could have just cancelled quietly. Moved on. Handled it privately. She flinched, but I wasn't raised to stay small. And I wasn't betrayed privately. So no, I didn't have to. I chose to. A few guests were crying. My aunt dabbed her eyes with a cocktail napkin. Daniel tried again. Alina, I was going to tell you. I finally turned to him. Were you? Before or after the honeymoon? He shrank. It was a mistake. No. A mistake is a wrong name in a text. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. You were in a relationship. With my best friend. While planning a future with me. I turned back to the crowd, and yet, I'm not angry. Not anymore. Because this clarity, this freedom, is a gift. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small velvet box. These were the rings, I said, opening it. Symbols of promises you never intended to keep. I held them out. If anyone in this room wants them, be my guest. No one moved. So. I placed the box on the altar and stepped back. This isn't a tragedy, I said. It's a beginning. I took one last look at the altar, then I stepped down, walked the aisle alone, tall, unbothered, unbroken, and the applause that started. In the back row? It followed me all the way out the door. After the applause died down, I sat in my car in complete silence, not from sadness, but from stillness. A kind of calm I had never known before. No ring. No dress. No man waiting at the altar, and for the first time in years, no mask on my face. I didn't drive straight home. I went to the lake we used to visit in college, Daniel, Chloe, and I. Back when I believed in things like forever and loyalty. The same wooden bench was still there. I sat down and let the quiet show me what healing might feel like. That night, my phone exploded, missed calls from my mother. Voicemails from Daniel. 3 long texts from Chloe, all starting with "I never meant to," but none of it landed. Not anymore. I opened Instagram. My wedding clip had already been posted, not by me, but by a cousin who thought it was iconic. Thousands of views in hours. Comments ranging from "queen behavior" to "I wish I had her strength." The story had left the venue and entered the world. By morning, Chloe's social media was gone. By afternoon, Daniel was on LinkedIn updating his job status, quietly looking for something new. Apparently, the company didn't want the PR heat, but me? I kept moving. I filed a claim to get back my portion of the wedding costs, everything I had proof for. The venue, the dress, the deposits. My lawyer said it would likely go through since the wedding was cancelled due to his personal misconduct. His words, not mine. My mother showed up 2 days later. "You humiliated us," she said. I laughed. "No, Mom." I exposed what was already true. She stood stiff in my doorway, struggling to understand who I'd become. "You could have just walked away quietly," she said. "I did," I replied. "Right up until I decided I'd had enough." She blinked at me. "People are saying things. Gossiping. The neighbors don't live my life," I said flatly. "They don't sleep next to a liar. They don't share dreams with someone who already gave them away to someone else." She looked like she wanted to say more, maybe to shame me back into the obedient version of myself, but she didn't, because the girl who once vowed to keep the peace? She was gone later. That week, I bumped into Chloe. She looked like a shadow of the friend I once knew, eyes hollow, shoulders hunched. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she whispered. "You didn't mean for me to find out," I corrected. Tears welled up in her eyes. "You were my best friend." I studied her face. "And I was yours, until I wasn't useful anymore. Until you wanted what I had. I was lost." I nodded. "Then maybe this helps you find yourself. But don't confuse what I did with revenge. I didn't try to destroy you. I just refused to let you destroy me in private." She didn't reply. We both stood in silence, and then I walked away. I didn't owe her closure. Justice wasn't about ruining her life. It was about reclaiming mine. A month passed. I started working with a trauma therapist, not because I was broken, but because I was ready to stop carrying pain that didn't belong to me. I launched a newsletter about emotional boundary setting. It started small. Then it spread like wildfire. Women wrote in every day, "He cheated and my family blamed me. My sister slept with my husband. My best friend ruined my engagement." I read them all, and I replied to as many as I could. Sometimes, the justice isn't loud. Sometimes, it's soft, steady, unapologetic, but it always comes. And sometimes, you don't even have to raise your voice to burn the whole illusion down. It's been 6 months since the wedding. That wasn't. I moved into a new apartment, not because I needed to, but because I wanted everything in my life to feel like mine. No echoes of old conversations. No shadows in the corners. Just clean walls, soft light, and quiet mornings. I bought furniture slowly. One piece at a time. I didn't rush to complete anything. That was the old me, chasing perfection, trying to make things look right even when they felt wrong. Now, I cared more about how things felt when I sat in them. The velvet green couch near the window? I chose that one because it made me feel safe and alive at the same time. I started painting again. Not for anyone else. Not to impress or sell or show. Just to move feelings out of my body and onto canvas. My therapist once told me, healing isn't becoming someone new. It's returning to who you were before the world told you who to be. That stuck with me, because the truth is, I wasn't building a new life. I was returning to the woman I'd buried under politeness, expectations, and keeping everyone else comfortable. I reconnected with old friends, the ones I'd quietly lost while being Chloe's shadow, while orbiting Daniel's universe. Some welcomed me back with hugs. Others with caution. I didn't blame them. I disappeared on them too, but the ones who mattered stayed. One of them, Maya, offered me a space in her women's retreat group. A weekend getaway where no one asked about weddings or family or breakups, just about who you were becoming. I went. I cried. I laughed. I danced barefoot under stars. It felt like something inside me had finally exhaled. Professionally, I started freelancing again, but this time, I set boundaries. I charged what I was worth. I said no without guilt. I stopped explaining myself. I don't know what success looks like to other people anymore. For me, it looks like peace. It looks like not flinching when I get a message from an unknown number. It looks like deleting old photos not in anger, but in softness, because I no longer need to hold on to proof of who I was back then. One morning, while sipping coffee, I got a card in the mail. No return address. Inside, it said, "Thank you for showing me what strength can look like in silence. I don't know how you did what you did, but I know you helped more than just yourself." There was no signature. I smiled, folded the card, tucked it into my journal. I don't need to know who it was from, because that's the thing about reclaiming your power. Once you do, it becomes less about proving something and more about simply being, and me, I'm just being Alina. Fully. Finally. No veil. No ring. No roles to perform, just a woman who walked through fire, and didn't just survive, she chose to shine. My name is Alina Summers. I'm 30 years old, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: you don't owe anyone a performance, not your family, not your friends, not the person you thought would love you forever. You don't have to smile through betrayal. You don't have to stay quiet to keep the peace. And you definitely don't have to hand over your worth just because someone else can't see it. I used to think strength looked like holding everything together, being the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who always understood. But real strength, it's walking away when no one claps for you. It's rebuilding your life without needing revenge to validate the pain. It's loving yourself enough to let things, and people, fall away when they no longer honor you. People always ask me how I stayed so calm. The truth is, I wasn't calm. I was heartbroken. I was angry. I was scared, but beneath all that, I was clear that I deserved more. Clear that betrayal says more about them than it does about you. Clear that healing is something you do for yourself, not for show. If you're watching this and you've ever been dismissed, belittled, betrayed, or replaced, I want you to know this: you don't have to prove yourself to them. You don't need their apology to become who you were meant to be. You build in silence. Protect your peace. And one day, let your work, your voice, your joy, speak louder than anything they ever said about you, because trust me, there is nothing more powerful than a woman who chooses herself.